How's it going, everybody? Connor here with Caliber Whips, and today in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a Paracord stock whip out of 275 nylon parachute cord. Now 3 years ago Adam Winrich taught me this method, and I've been making these types of stock whips ever since. And personally, I believe these are the best performing stock whips available, aside from maybe a few other exceptions. I would say hands down, if I had to do any type of routine, I'd probably pick a 275 Paracord stock whip. And I'm going to come right out and say this is not an easy tutorial at all. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the absolute hardest, I would say this is easily probably an 8.5 to a 9, depending on your skill level. So with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so to get started with the core of the whip, you're going to need a 21-inch section of ball chain, and then 8 gutted pieces of 20-inch paracord. So all these pieces are gutted, and they're all 20 inches long, and there's 8 of them. And I really stress this because it's very important that you make sure that you follow these steps precisely. So right here on the ball chain, what I've actually gone ahead and did was I've marked every 4th bead, I've marked it with some white paint. You guys see that? And the reason why I did this was because we're actually going to add one of these gutted pieces of cord on the beads. So it's actually going to start with nothing here, and it's going to taper out, and then there's going to be some thickness, and then it's going to taper down again. So that's what we're doing here today. That's kind of the goal. So I'm going to attach this to the vise, and we're going to start tying these little pieces of cord onto the ball chain. Okay, so we're ready to attach these strands onto the ball chain. So I have my bonded nylon thread here, and I've attached it onto one of the pieces of parachute cord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start wrapping it around the ball chain, and I'm going to wrap it around down almost every bead. So as you guys can see here, I'm just going to start wrapping it down like this. And wherever I get a marked bead, I'm just going to add a new strand to it. So right here is where we have a marked bead. I'm going to attach another piece of parachute cord, just like that. Making sure not to drop the spool. Alright, I'm going to zoom in on this one for you guys so you guys can see what it is I'm doing on a closer scale. I'm going to grab a piece of cord, just going to hold it up against the ball chain. And then I'm gently gonna tie that around. Now we're not actually binding the core. The purpose of this nylon thread is to just keep it from going anywhere. Now you don't have to do this step. Some people don't. They just kind of plait over the ball chain and then attach the cord where they may. I don't like that method. I prefer to have something more secure. So this is what I personally like doing. So there we go. This is kind of what we're going to do until we get down to the last bead and we run out of parachute cord. So there's 8 markings on every 4th bead, and there's 8 pieces of paracord. So you should have 8 pieces of cord adding on when you're done. So I'll show you guys that when I'm finished. Alright, so we've officially finished tying all the strands to the core. And now the step that's left here is we're actually going to start cutting these pieces of core right here. So we're going to cut these pieces of cord evenly until we get to 21 inches. So I'm going to show you guys real quick. at the 21 inch mark. 21 inches is where the ball chain ends. The last piece of cord is going to be right before that. So the last thing that's coming out of the core is going to be the ball chain. So between here, right there, and then right there, we're going to cut these 8 strands evenly with each other. And again, I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I've gone ahead and cut each strand leading up to the core. And what we're going to do is take our bonded nylon thread and tie it up just like we did with the top. Okay, so the core is officially done. What I've gone ahead and did was I've wrapped the entire length of the ball chain in that bonded nylon thread. As you guys can see here, everywhere a strand is dropped, it is just snipped and tied over. And again, this is my method of preparing the core of a Stockwhip. Alright, so let's move on to the first belly. Okay, so to get started with the first belly, I went ahead and cut 4 8-foot sections of 275 parachute cord. And then I went through and I gutted it, found the halfway point, which is about here, and then moved down about 1 inch. So this is the halfway point, but what we're going to do is braid about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and then we're going to fold that over and start braiding it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just start braiding this flat braid cord. Well, I'm going to braid the cord into a flat braid. Just like this. Now, if you saw my video, how to braid paracord, you'll know how to do this, but if not, just take a look at what I'm doing now and just kind of go for it. Okay, so we're pretty much just about done with the cord, with braiding it. So I'm going to take it out of the vise, just like this. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start actually plaiting it. And the way I go about doing this is I will take the cord that I have here, flatten the flat braid that we did, but we're going to stick it in the vise, just like this. Okay, so we're ready to actually start braiding the whip itself. So like I said before, I have the whip, the braiding kind of folded over on itself and clamped in the vise. So here's one side, here's the other side. We're going to make sure that this side right here is facing the bottom. Well, one of the sides is, the side that should be at least. And then the other side is facing the bottom as well. So what we're going to be doing here is, as you guys notice, we're going to start another version of the flat braid, but it's going to fold over into plaiting. So this is what it looks like. Sorry about the dark strands again, but bear with me here. We're going to go under and then over, just like that. And then here, we're going to go over and then under, just like this. Perfect. And now we have actually reached our flat braid. So now what we're going to do is take our ball chain that we have here, and we're going to slip it underneath our cord. You guys see that? Now we're actually going to start plaiting. So this piece right here of cord, we're going to go around the back, and we're going to go under 2, over 2. Just like that. Now here, we're going to go around the back, under 2, over 2. Same as before. Now we're actually plaiting the whip. And if this is a little bit confusing, you may want to go check out a couple of other tutorials on making stock whips, because I know Nick Schrader from Nick's Whip Shop has a couple videos on making stock whips out of 550 cord. So if this is a little bit confusing, go check out some of his stuff. Or if not, I'll probably do a video in the future on this process exclusively. All right, so now that we have a few cords plaited, I'm going to go ahead and pull this ball chain just down a little bit. We're not going to pull it very tight because we don't want it to pull out of the parachute cord. There we go. That's what we want right there. Just like that. That's what we're looking for. Now we're going to pull each cord super tight, and we're going to start braiding again. Under 2 over 2. And then we also have, real quick, 2 other pieces of 4-foot cord that we're actually going to inject in here as the taper starts to swell out. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're ready to inject another strand. So this is a 4-foot section of parachute cord that's been halved or doubled over, so it's technically not in half. We're just going to shove it up into the plaiting like this, and then we're just going to plait normally. So it's sticking about right in here in the middle, so that's where we're going to pretend it is. Same goes over here. We're going to pretend that it's about right there, one of the two. And there we go, we have injected a strand of paracord into our plaiting. And now another quick tip, don't plait super tight. A lot of people, they like to really crank down. You don't want to do that in this case. What you want to do is you want to plait just tight enough for the cord to actually fit over the whip. Again, for a stock whip like this, we want it to be very, very loose, especially if it's 275 cord. So that's what we're looking for here. We're looking to keep it really loose, and we're looking to keep it extremely tight as far as the action of the whip, not the actual plaiting. So the action of the whip, we want it to be nice and tight. So to do that, we want the plaiting to be very loose. And that's how I make my 275 cord stock whips. I make the plaiting very, very loose. So the action of the whip is very tight, and it can perform a lot of difficult routines. Okay, so in about another second or two, we're actually going to inject our second strand. So what I have here, take my cord, so just like this, and then find that halfway point right there. And I'm going to stick it into our plaiting. Just like that. Going to go around the back, under 3 over 3. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue plaiting, but as the cord gets thinner, or as the core loses strands, we're going to start dropping these 2 pink strands. And I won't cut them and singe them off. I'll show you what the whole thing looks like after this entire belly is done being braided. So I'll see you guys when I get there. Alright, so we've reached the end of our ball chain right here. And I said that we only drop the pink strands. That's not entirely true. That's the only strands that we drop at the top before we reach the ball chain. So we started with 4. We're going to end the ball chain at 4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep on plaiting until we get to just the end of the chain. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull 2 strands down, and we're going to go from 8 to 6 plait right away. Just like that. So one side I'm going to go under 1 over 2, and on the other side I'm going to go under 1 over 1, just like that. That's how I always do my 6 plat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plait and then drop strands until we get to 27 inches. So within the next 7 inches, we're going to drop these 2 strands and we're going to end at a 4 plat. And I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so the first belly is done. You can see where it kind of tapers out and kind of has that swing belly. Right here is where the 2 injected strands have been dropped, which is what we wanted. The ball chain ends at about right here at the 21-inch mark. And then we plaited the strands that were dropped from 6 to 8 were actually put inside as a core, and then we plaited around it. So from here, the 6 plat, there's 2 strands underneath. The 5 plat, there's still 2 strands. And then the 4 plat, it goes from 1 strand down to 0 strands. So there's 2 strands here. The core strand is dropped or cut loose. And then we drop the 5th strand from 5 to 4 plat. Then we have 1 strand in the core and then 0 strands. And then at the 27-inch mark is where we tie off the strands. And then we have 5 inches right here. This is 5 inches, and then it staggers. So you guys can see here we have 5 inches. This is about 3, that's about 1, and then that's about a 1/4 inch. So that's what we're looking for in the first belly. So what we're going to actually do here is just take our snippers and just cut each core, or cut each drop strand, and just cinch it and melt it into our belly. So that's what we're going to do with all of it, and then we're going to start tying the overlay. But before we attach our overlay, what we need to do is roll the first belly. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is gently press on our belly and just roll back and forth with these 2 old cutting boards that I have. I've been using these for a long time. I like the grip that they have. They're not smooth. And we're going to gently roll it. So usually when I roll a whip, I go really hard and just go nuts on it. But since this belly is relatively soft, we don't want to press it as hard as physically possible. Just an adequate pressure, a soft pressure, or medium pressure if you want, is more than adequate to get the job done in this case. And if you don't know why we roll a whip, the purpose of that is to evenly distribute the tension of the strands all across the length of the whip. Because since we're people, we're not like perfect machines, every strand is going to have minute differences in the tension. So, you know, this piece right here is going to be different than that piece, and that piece, and that piece. So by rolling the whip, you actually automatically distribute the tension evenly across the whip. It's actually really nice. Think of, before you roll it, think of it as kind of like ripply water. And then after you roll it, just think of it as like smooth, still water. You know what I mean? Like a puddle. So that's what we want. That's what we're looking for. And there we go, we are done. Look how smooth and straight that is. That's what we're looking for. Now we're ready to start tying our overlay. All right, so I have the strands here, and for the overlay, what we're gonna need is 6 14-foot sections and then 2 10-foot sections. So one of these, for example, dark green strands is 10 feet and the other one is 14 feet. And then one of these ones is 10 feet. So if you want to follow along with the exact pattern that I'm doing, one is 10, one is 14, one is 10, and then the rest are 14. And the reason why I'm doing it in this specific order is because we're doing a pattern that looks kind of like this. You guys see what I'm talking about? That's kind of what we're doing. So in order to set that up, to make it look nice and clean, you have to organize the strands in a certain order. And this is the order that it has to be done. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just start braiding normally. So over, under, over. Okay, there we go, we have our base, and now what we're going to do is we're going to keep on braiding until we get to a particular point, because this has to be a certain length and it has to reach a certain pattern point. And I'll show you what that doesn't make a lot of sense now, but I'll show you exactly what that looks like when I finish braiding this part of the whip. Alright, so we finished braiding and we stopped at a particular point. I'm going to throw up a picture right here of a better, a clearer picture with lighter colors so you guys can see why we're stopping here. So the reason why we're doing this is because we need to fold these over and start braiding. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hemostats, I'm just going to clamp one side because I'm just going to keep the other side held in place. So watch my fingers here because I have to take these strands, making sure that they don't go anywhere. Perfect, that's what we want. Okay, now that we have everything situated, as you can see as I move this over and fold it, those off-colored strands are now at the top, which is exactly what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another pair of hemostats, just so I have some peace of mind that doesn't go anywhere. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is fold this over. We're not going to introduce the belly just yet. We're going to fold this over and put the tip of it right in the vise, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this right here, these off-colored strands, and I'm going to start flat braiding it like I normally do. So as we can tell, this goes, let me zoom in for you so you guys know exactly what's going on. As you can see, this goes under, this goes over that Kelly green strand, we're going to go under this olive green strand, or the dark one. We're going to go over and then under and then over, just like that. And then here we're going to go over, under, just like that. Here we're going to go under, over, over. And then here we're going to go over, under, under. Just like that. Now we're going to take out the hemostats because we are finished. Perfect. Now we are ready to do our normal plaiting as if everything's hunky-dory. And look, those two dark colored strands are now side by side, which is exactly what we're looking for. Now we're going to take this, unravel it. Well, not unravel it, but we're going to undo our vise here. We're going to take our belly of the whip that we just did, and we're going to feed it in, just like that. Now we're going to kind of squish that closed. Perfect. Now we are ready to just plait normally. However, we're not going to do under 4 over 4. Because this part of the whip is so tiny and we have so many strands to work with, we're actually going to do a diamond plait. So we're actually going to go under, over, over. So this is very difficult to do if this is brand new. So if you're a brand new whip maker, this is going to be a nightmare to attempt, but I'm pretty sure you guys can handle it. The reason why we do this is because it allows for a much tighter grip onto our whip. A little poet don't know. Then we're going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Perfect. Just like that. And we're going to continue this for just a little bit, probably a couple more strands, and then we're going to transition into our normal plaiting, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, we are now ready to go with the normal under 4 over 4 pattern. However, before we just dive right into it, one of the things that I like to do first is usually I do the under 1 over 1 until I get to a certain sequence. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1, but then over 3. See what I mean right there? And we're going to transition into the normal herringbone plait. Okay, so I'm going to go under, over, under, and then over 3. I'm going to go over here now take this strand right here in the back. I'm gonna pull it nice and tight. I'm gonna go under one, over one, under one, and then over 5. And then I'm gonna go with the other strand that I have. Under, over, under, and then over 5. Now we're ready to just transition into the under 4 over 4 pattern. Now do keep an eye on all of these strands, make sure they're all straight with each other. This part is very difficult because it just kind of likes to cluster up and you get this train wreck. It looks messy at first, but once you start pulling it kind of tight, get everything going, it'll look good. Now when you first start out, for example, like the first half inch, when you do the diamond plait and then the first ½ inch, you want to make sure you pull it very, very tight. Not like as hard as humanly possible, but very close to it. Because what we're going to be doing is then this will hold the foundation in place, so then we can transition into that loose plait. So right about here, now is where I'm going to start easing up and lightening up on the plaiting. So I'm not going to pull as tight, I'm going to slowly transition into kind of a lighter tug. So I'm going to continue on plaiting until we get to our first strand drop. Okay, so we've reached the 21-inch mark, which is right where the ball chain ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the 10-foot strand. So we're going to go from basically 16 plait down to 14 plait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find there we go, there's our 10-foot strand here. I'm dropping the light green one. I'm not dropping the dark green one, in case you're wondering. So here's the other one right here. And I'm just going to tug, just like that. Perfect. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to wrap these strands around the back, and I'm actually going to clamp them. Because what I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab some nylon thread. I'm going to cut a piece of it. And what I'm actually going to do here is I'm actually going to wrap it ever so slightly over the strands. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the strands don't start, kind of falling back behind the thong of the whip. We want to keep these strands on top. So to do that, what I'm basically going to do is just wrap them on top of the whip. And I'm going to go down just a little bit, and then I'm basically just going to do kind of this over pattern here. I'm just going to kind of tie it off just gently, just like that. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue plaiting, and what we're going to do now is we're going to keep on plaiting until we get to the 24-inch mark, which is just past where we tied off our piece of string. Okay, so we've made it to the 24-inch mark. We have the 2 strands that we dropped still under here. What we're going to do now is we're going to go from 14 down to 12 plait. And to do that, we're going to find our 10-foot light green strand, which is right here. I'm going to take that strand and I'm going to pull it underneath here, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the other side, look for that strand, which is right here. I'm just going to grab this guy right here and hold him right there. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my piece of nylon thread that I had from earlier, and I'm going to gently wrap it. Okay, there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little screwdriver here, and I'm going to gently pull on the dropped strands, just like that, and then pull it slightly down, just like that. Same goes for this side here. I'm going to pull and then tug, just like that. Perfect. Now we're ready to continue plaiting under 3 over 3. And we're just going to keep on plaiting normally until we get to the 32-inch mark. Alright, so we are at the 32-inch mark, and we are ready to go from basically 14 plait down to 12 plait. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut 2 of these strands right here, and then I'm going to drop 2 more. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to drop these 2 strands back here, and to do that you just simply cut them. So I'm basically going to do a little snipping action right here, just cut that there, move down like I want to say like a couple millimeters and cut that there as well. Grab my little torch and singe it off so it doesn't, go anywhere. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plait normally, but we're going to drop 2 strands. So the first strand we're going to drop is this one right here. Now all of these strands are the 14 footers, so it doesn't matter which strand you drop. These are all the exact same. So don't worry about, does it have to be the right strand or not? They're all the exact same. So you can just pick one. The only reason why I'm picking the ones that I am is because it is not the olive green strand. I only want basically the light green strands right now because we're going to save this dark green strand to the very end. And now that we have this done, we're just going to keep on plaiting. Okay, just want to let you guys know that we are on our way to the 35-inch mark here with our 10 plait, but I want to let you guys know that during our 10 plait, the 4 core strands that we have drop down to 3. So by the time we've reached our 35-inch strand, which is about right here, we will lose a core strand. This will help it to taper. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to break down my whip making card right here on camera so you guys can see what it is we're doing, because this is going to be the last footage of me basically filming until we get to the very end. So there's basically no reason for me to explain every single strand drop when I can basically just break them all down for you here on camera. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so here are the numbers. Be sure to write them down. So what I have here is 16 plait all the way down to 4 plait and when they should be dropped. So if you're wondering where the 1-inch marker starts, here's a quick photo of where the 1-inch mark should start, and then you basically measure from there. So at 21 inches, you drop the 16 plait. Now if you're not sure what plait number you're actually on, look at the number of strands you have and count them on each side. Let's say, for example, you've got 5 on one side and 5 strands on the other side. Well, you have 10 plait. Let's say, for example, you have 3 strands on one side and 3 strands on the other. Well, 3 plus 3 is 6. You're at 6 plait. Let's say you have 8 strands on one side and 8 strands on the other side. Well, 8 plus 8 is 16. So that's a quick thing to keep in mind if you're new to whip making. If not, you'll already know what that is. So this is when they should be dropped. So remember I told you at the 32-inch mark we dropped the 12 plait? Well, that's what you want to keep in mind. So these 2 strands right here are actually going to make up the 4 core strands that are seen right here. These are the core strands that are in each plait. So I'll try to explain to you what this means. So for our 10 plait, we drop it at the 35-inch mark. That means between 32 and 35, we drop one of our core strands from 4 down to 3. That's the purpose. So same goes for here as well. We drop it, we drop our 10 plait here at the 35-inch mark, so then we're left with 8 plait. During the 3 inches from 8 during our 3 inches, from 35 to 38 inches, we drop one of our core strands down to 3 to 2. Same goes for, well, not the same goes for 6, because we actually maintain 2 core strands in the center during the whole duration of our plaiting for 6 plait. And then once we get to the 41-inch mark and we drop those 2 core strands, we just switch them out with the ones we dropped for 6 plait. Then for 4 plait, we go from 2 down to 1 down to 0. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. The reason why I'm showing you guys all this now is because I'm actually not going to break down any more strand drops, because for the sake of the length of this video, I don't want it to be some 2-hour long whip making tutorial. I just want it to be something you guys can kind of follow along to. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off the whole thong of the whip, and we're going to attach our fall. Alright, so the thong of the whip is finished. I've tied a pseudo English eye fall hitch, which you can see right here. If you want to check out this video, I'll put a card right up here if you're interested in checking that out. So I always finish off the thongs of my 275 cord whips with a pseudo English eye. So now what we're going to do is attach a taper twisted fall. Now what I've gone ahead and did was I've cut a 31-inch section of cord, and one section is 10 inches and the other section is 20 inches. Actually, this side's 11 inches and this side is 20 inches. So that makes 31 inches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start twisting like this. So I'll zoom in for you guys so you guys can see it better. So we're basically twisting everything clockwise. We're twisting the strands clockwise, the actual strands themselves, and then we're twisting the whole thing counterclockwise. So the strands are going clockwise, and both of them are going counterclockwise. So we're going to keep on doing this until we get to 8 inches. So we've reached the end of our taper twist. One thing I want you guys to keep in mind here is when you go to twist it, make sure it kind of folds over on itself in a nice little tube. That's what you're looking for. And then you want to pull it really tight, kind of like this, and then double it over on itself like that. So now what we're going to do is tie it off. And to do that, we unravel this entire piece right here, make sure all the twisting is out. Then what we're going to do is we're going to loop it around the back like this. And then we're going to go straight down. Very similar to an actual fall hitch. Perfect, just like that. Now, if you want to, you can take a little lacing needle like this and feed it in through here. However, I don't have enough cord for that. I literally ran out of black cord. So I'm not going to make one long enough to feed this into here. And plus, doing it this way makes it a little bit more secure. So I'm going to pull that nice and tight. Take my snippers here and snip it to about, I want to say 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And then what I'm going to do is take my little torch here and singe that. And there we go. We are done with the thong of the whip. Now we have to do is roll it and we'll be done. Okay, so rolling the whip is pretty much just the same as before. You take your little rolling pad and you go over it nice and gentle, and you're pretty much done. I actually went ahead and rolled this whip here on the floor. So now this whip is done. We're going to save it for later to wax it, and now we're going to move on to the handle. Alright, so we are ready to get started on our handle. What I've gone ahead and did was I've cut a 16-inch section of dowel rod. This is 5/8 of an inch. And then I took my little cutters here, and I actually cut the 16-inch mark with my little PVC cutters. Just like that. And it leaves me with this very nice looking lip here on the dowel rod. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to take my utility knife, and I'm actually going to start cutting away about right here. I'm going to start right here at the lip, and I'm going to start cutting away, and it's going to have kind of a mushroom head on it. That's the only way to describe it. So I use my little utility knife here and cut basically a little mushroom out of the end of the dowel rod. This is my method of doing it, so I know you've seen it differently on other channels. So with that being said, I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished. So there we go, we finished cutting up our dowel rod. Be sure to be careful when you use any utility knife. For example, when I carve, I use a utility knife, not this one. I use a bigger, heavier duty one. But one time I slipped and I accidentally cut my thumb. You guys can see the scar. I'll put up a picture right here. Yeah, so that was not good. So you want to be careful when you're carving this piece of wood out here. I've only cut my thumb once out of the few dozen Stockwhips that I've made, so I'm not even going to worry about it. But again, just a word of caution if you're going to be using a utility knife to cut this. So with that being said, let's move on and start with the keeper. Okay, so we are ready to plait this nightmare that is the keeper. So what I have here is I have 16 strands. So they're about, I would say, 15 to 20 inches long. It doesn't really matter. You just need to cover the dowel rod. So I would say, to be on the safe side, you need 20 inch sections. So we have 16 of them. 8 of them are black and 8 of them are olive green. So they're kind of off colored because we're going to get this barber pole plait. So it's going to look a bit weird at first, but bear with me here. So I'm going to divide it into 8. So we got 3, 6, 8, perfect. And then we should have 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, perfect on this side. You want to make sure that they're well, if you want the pattern that I want, you want to make sure that they're alternating. And you have to make sure they stay alternating. And yes, this is a nightmare. And we're basically just going to keep on doing this until we get the length that we want. I'll show you what this looks like after I'm done. But before I do that, I want to show you guys real quick that I do have a video on how to braid parachute cord. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. I'll see if I can throw up a card up here if you guys are interested in checking that out. But basically the concept is pretty much the same, where you take your strands, you go under, over, under, over, under, over, just like this. That's kind of what you're looking for. And again, it's all covered in the video, how to braid paracord. So check that out if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys when I'm done braiding this thing. All right, so the flat braid is finished. I have about, I want to say about 6 inches on it. You can see the pattern that is formed from it. That's kind of what I was looking for. Now you can't see it very well when it's all close up and in detail, but if you kind of blur your eyes a little bit, you can kind of tell what the pattern looks like. See? Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quote unquote roll it. And this is basically just a big pair of hemostats that I have, and I'm going to rub it back and forth. Just like this. This helps to smooth out the strands, make it look a lot nicer, and kind of clean it up a bit. There we go. I think that's perfect. Now we're ready to attach it onto our handle. All right, so we have our Stockwhip handle in the vise right here. We have our keeper, and I took this Dacron or nylon thread and I melted it into our little mushroom we have carved into here. And what we're going to do is we're going to tightly wrap our keeper around our handle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unclamp the keeper. Now what I'm going to do is gently place it over, try to wrap it around as much as I can, like that. I'm going to grab my cord and tightly go over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back side of it, making sure that it's the perfect diameter of what I want. I have to make sure this is the perfect diameter because the last thing I want to do is make it too small or too loose. For me, I find it just above 2 fingers is good. I'll give you the exact measurements in a second after I finish wrapping it up. So I'm basically just going to keep on wrapping as tight as I can. I'm going to do a few more wrappings of this. Then I'm going to cut it and singe it. Perfect. Now I'm going to unravel this entire thing just like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see where the kind of carving ends. So it ends about right here. I'm going to take each strand and I'm going to cut it just so it's right under the carving. So I'll show you what that looks like. So there we go. We have just finished cutting up all the strands nice and even. Well, actually, no, not nice and even. It's nice and even with the carving, but it's not even with each other. And the purpose of this is because we're going to take our scratch awl just like this, and we're going to pull it through just like that. And we're going to unravel each piece of cord. And the purpose of this is to help spread it out evenly, because we're actually going to wrap this around with our cord. So when I'm finished, I'll get back to you guys after I'm done unraveling each piece of parachute cord. Alright, so I finished fluffing out the parachute cord. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lighter here. I'm going to burn the cord. And I'm basically just going to start tying it around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hold this up against the whip handle, and I'm going to try to wrap it around as tight as I can. This popped out, so I got to put it back on again. There we go. Going to do a couple of quick wrappings. There we go. And I'm going to pull this as tight as I can and basically just wrap it around. Now, as you can see here, we do have some extra fluff on the cord. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start snipping it off of the handle because we don't need it. Just basically give it a little haircut. There we go, that should do it. And we're just going to keep on wrapping. Okay, so as you can see, we're pretty much done wrapping it, but as you can tell, it looks absolutely hideous and it's completely uneven. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to keep on wrapping this and overlapping parts where it looks thin and then covering up places that looks like it needs to. So I'm going to wrap it to about here, but I'm going to go back and forth over and over again until this fills out quite nicely. And I'll show you what that looks like. So there we go. I just attached the binding onto our Stockwhip handle. If you want to know how big this keeper is or how big to make it, see the little top of this handle? What you want to do is measure out 2 inches from the top. So the handle starts at about here. This is 2 inches. Not from back here, as you can tell by this yellow line. Not from back here, but from down here. You want it to be exactly 2 inches long. So that's what you're looking for in a Stockwhip keeper. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the hitch onto our handle. Alright, so the hitching is done. You can check it out in this video right here, how to do Stockwhip hitching. And in that video, I actually do this exact Stockwhip. So what we're going to do now is we're going to attach our strands onto the handle. So what I've gone ahead and did was I've taken some hockey tape and wrapped it all the way down the bottom half of our handle. So let me measure it real fast. The whole handle is 16 inches. And from here down, it's about 8.5. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach our 275 cord strands onto it. And the way that I'm going to do this is, obviously I have the hockey tape here to keep it from slipping, but I'm also going to use some electrical tape to hold the top half onto here. So I'll show you what that looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 8 of our strands here and 8 of our strands here and just separate them. So I'm going to count them real fast. So we've got 8 here, 4, 8. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these strands down. This is the halfway mark, by the way. So I'm going to hold that there real fast. Grab a piece of electrical tape. Now, the purpose of this electrical tape is to just keep it from going anywhere. This piece of electrical tape is not permanent. It's not even going to stay. I'm going to remove it after we're done. But the purpose of this is to just keep this from going anywhere. So now it's not going to slip and slide on me. And now with these pieces over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap them all around the back. So I'm going to put it over the Stockwhip, just like that. Now they're all hanging out back here. Actually, I'm going to flip this over because I want the green to be on top. So what I'm going to do is hold this on the back. I'm going to take my strands here. I'm going to hold this down. And I'm going to hold these strands. And these strands are going to cross on top. Just like this. So I have to make sure they're all straight. It's going to cross on top, just like that. Oop. It's going to cross on top, just like that. And the 8 strands that we had down here, they're going to be chilling right there. All right, so these 8 strands, they're going to go under 8, over 8. All 8 of these strands. Now what you can do is you can kind of feed them through one at a time, but I'm just going to stick them all through just like that. This part is kind of a hassle to do, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is actually going to start feeding these strands in one by one until we are completely done with these black strands right here. This is kind of hard to get the hang of, so it may take a little bit of practice. If you're not too comfortable with working with all these 275 cord strands, you can just go ahead and plait some 550 cord. It really doesn't make a difference. The performance level of the whip, all we cared about was the thong of the whip. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that all you need is the thong and then the keeper up top, because a 275 paracord keeper does have more movement and more flexibility than, say, a 550 paracord keeper. So I'll get back with you guys after I'm done plaiting a couple of these big squares of 275 cord. And again, I'm just going them one at a time, one strand at a time. Okay, just thought I'd give you guys a quick update. I'm about halfway done with the handle of the whip, but when you guys make sure, when you guys are doing this, make sure that you guys keep every strand in line, because sometimes these strands like to switch places because there's just so many of them. So for example, what I did was I just threw these green strands on top and just left them there. All you have to do is keep track of where they are. Eventually, the way that they're lined up, because one side is this way, the other side is that way, by default, they will end up like this. So if for some reason you're going down with a pattern like this, you have 3 green strands on top, and they're like all mismatched, that means your strands are out of place and you have to go back through and correct that. So just thought I'd give you guys an update and let you know. All right, moving on. All right, so we've reached the end of our handle and I've tied it off with some artificial sinew. I'm going to take a very fresh razor blade that has not been used, and I'm just going to go around the base of the sinew. Just like this. There we go. Put these in the trash. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lighter here and scorch the base of it, just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more sinew and wrap it around the base. All right, perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a saw. So I'm just going to take my hacksaw here and I'm just going to cut off this remaining piece of wood here. There we go. We are done with the bottom half of the handle. Now all that's left to do is to roll this piece and we'll be ready for the Turk's knot. So there we go. Our handle is done. If I move it down real quick, you can definitely see the pattern. Looks really good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to attach our Turk's knot foundation. I'm not going to show it in this video because I do have a video right here. Be sure to check it out. I'll throw up a card right up here in the corner if you guys want to see it for yourself. But yeah, after I attach the Turk's knot, we'll be ready to wax this thing. All right, so I got the wax cooking here up on the grill. And I thought I'd show you guys real quick. So the whip is virtually done. I have the Turk's knot done. You guys can check out this video right here. I'll throw up a card as well if you want to see how to do that particular Turk's knot. But what I wanted to show you guys was this. So one thing that I do is I always duct tape, well not duct tape, I put electrical tape on the keeper of my Stockwhip before I wax it. And the reason for this is I don't actually wax the keeper because I want to keep it as loose as possible. And by doing so, it allows the whip to have more mobility when it performs more routines. So I don't wax the keeper. It is something I personally don't do, but if you want to do it, go right ahead. So next step is to pretty much just wax this and we'll be done. We'll be ready to rock. All right, so we got the first thing going in the wax, our Stockwhip thong. Let all those bubbles come out. Now let me see if my handle will fit. Yep, my handle will definitely fit in there. And we're just gonna go through. I have this little rod right here that I take to all my stuff. I just poke at it. We got paper towels here on standby, and we're just gonna wait until the bubbles are gone. All right, so we're ready to take everything out. I'm gonna take the handle out first. That's looking pretty snazzy. That actually looks really good. Okay, I'm gonna set this guy down here. There we go. That's kind of weird. This paracord kind of smells like, almost like pie. That is bizarre. I've never had that happen before. Out of literally the hundreds of whips that I've made, this is the first whip that I've made that actually smells like pie when it's coming out of the wax. It's kind of almost like a cinnamony apple pie. It's so weird. Holy cow. I wonder if any other of you whip makers have had that issue. Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, now we're ready to attach the thong onto the handle. All right, so only a little bit of wax touched the edges of the keeper, but by and large, we're pretty much good. So what I did was, notice how the keeper looks like this. What we need to do is fold it in half in on itself. This is what we want, just like that. So now what I'm going to do is take my whip thong just like this. I'm going to feed it into itself like that. It's going to be a little bit difficult because the whip thong is so small. Okay, so there we go. Now what we're going to do is take the follow the whip and feed it through. There we go, just like that, we are done. Now we have to let this whip cool down a little bit because it's still warm from the wax. And we are done. So there we go, the whip is all done. I went ahead and attached a cracker. Now I have a couple of videos on how to make crackers on my channel, but what I did for this one, I just took a piece of polypropylene string and kind of twisted it up against my leg and then just tied a little knot and I was good to go. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this whip. Let's go out and give it a few test cracks. Well, that pretty much does it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as check out my secondary YouTube channel. And also check out these two videos right here. I think you'll enjoy them very much. So that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.